Hello, welcome back to my Thoughtful Thursdays video channel. We just had one of the most important elections of our lifetime, and I thought it prudent to at least talk about it, which means that we once again push off the 13th Amendment to next week. Thoughtful Thursdays is a video channel where we look at the important topics, both inside and outside the church. Now, please make sure that you subscribe below and share this video if you'd like others to see videos like this in the future. The election is, of course, of great importance to talk about within the church because, as you know, it was the white evangelical church that carried Trump to a victory the last time. Now, it's popular in the church to say things like, oh, I don't want to get political, or why do you have to make it political? However, the white evangelical church already made it political when they decided that as a voting bloc, they were going to be aligned with the Republican Party. I wish it wasn't political. However, I also wish that 81% of white evangelicals wouldn't have voted for him. I could maybe see 40%, maybe 50%, but 81%? No, absolutely not. Something else must be going on here. My generation needs us to talk about politics within the church. Of course, I mean politics with a small p, not politics with a big P. Now, unfortunately, we've done a disservice to the country when we refuse to talk about politics within the church because it might offend others. To say that Jesus or the Bible weren't political would be a complete lie. Jesus was very political. If politics are all about power and who gets to have the power and who gets to reign and who are the lost and the least and how are they treating our society, well, sure as heck fire, Jesus has a lot to say about politics. The election results are still up in the air. Obviously, we can't make a fair statement on that until every single vote has been tallied and counted. I'm not about to make a strong statement one way or the other. Obviously, we knew that Biden would get the popular vote. The Electoral College was dicey, however, on a number of fronts, though. Depending how certain states went, it really could have gone either way. There were also a few things that we knew going into the results of this election. We knew that mail-in ballots were going to be key. Of course they were key. We knew that all along. People have been predicting this days, months before this. It was going to come down to mail-in ballots within a few key states. There's a reason that one side of the political process tried everything they could to make mail-in ballots not count as legitimate votes. First, they attacked the veracity of such a thing, even though absentee ballots had been cast for decades with almost zero chance of voter fraud. And it's extremely sad that a certain group of people are now trying as hard as they can to make sure that people's votes don't get counted. Why wouldn't you want people's votes to be counted? Isn't this the land of the free? Isn't this a free and fair election? Shouldn't everyone's voice count equally in our country when we go to that ballot booth to cast our vote? There are some people that don't think that every voice should be heard, whether that's through ending the vote count early or shutting down voting polling places or trying to outlaw mail-in ballots or demanding voter ID, possibly putting false voting boxes out in your state to confuse people about where they're supposed to drop off their ballot. This is really confusing and really sad for our country. It cheapens our democracy when people resort to such cheap tactics just to make sure that people's voice shouldn't be represented just because they don't agree with their politics. Now, obviously, I'm quite liberal. I don't hide that. In fact, I've tried hard to never hide that. That does not mean that I want to suppress the vote of any of my other fellow Americans. I believe that every vote counts. That being said, even the method of voting that we have today is outdated. We have the Electoral College system, which is antiquated and needs to go. It doesn't accurately reflect our country or its morals. And it's biased against people who live in the city. It's biased against people of color. It's time to go. Think about it. 8 out of the first 9 presidents were plantation owners from Virginia. 10 out of the first 12 presidents owned slaves. There was a great benefit to states in the South to keep a system that favored owning slaves. That was literally what the system was put into place for. Sure, you'll find well-intentioned people saying things like, no, Kyle, it was really a balance of power between the large and the small states. No, it wasn't. It was to balance the power between states who owned slaves and wanted to protect that and other states. The system was built to balance that power. It honestly saddens me to see our country so divided. I look at the map of the United States as I write this. Right now, Georgia could flip blue potentially. We don't know. It is interesting to see that out of all the states that wanted to break away from the Union back during the Civil War, who wanted to destroy the United States as a country, out of all of those states, only Virginia went blue in this election. Part of it makes me wonder, it makes me scratch my head. We generally want to think of ourselves as good people. However, are the same lines there since the Civil War? I grew up in Illinois. I was always proud of my heritage, that we were a Union state, that we were the land of Lincoln. Now, Lincoln had his own problems, and I don't have time to get into that today. However, I grew up proud, believing that if ever there were a Civil War, that I would be on the Union side. I'd be on what I would consider the right side of history. I guess I naively assumed that people around me would too, that when they think back to the Civil War and the two factions that were warring against themselves, the Union and the Confederacy. However, when the election cycle rolls around, I scratch my head, because people that I assumed would be proud of their heritage, of fighting for the North, of fighting for the right side of history, vote against the very things that I would assume they would vote for. We are certainly a country divided. Martin Luther King Jr. used to say that the most segregated hour is on Sunday mornings, and I think that I would add to that the most segregated time in our country comes right when it's time to vote. I guess I would ask people, if the Civil War were to happen again today, do you think that you would be on the side of the Confederacy? Or do you think that you would see yourself being on the side of the Union? I think that's a really important question for us to ask today. It's really popular for liberals to paint Donald Trump and his supporters as being raging racist and country bumpkins who don't know anything. Now, unfortunately, painting that picture doesn't usually help. Do I believe that Donald Trump is racist? Yes, absolutely. However, I'm a racist. I don't want to be. I'm often surprised when I find things in my brain that I don't like. Like, why did that get there? Why do I believe that? Where did that belief come from? I'm a white man that grew up in a country that benefits from whiteness. Of course I'm racist. I'm trying to undo that. I believe that Donald Trump is racist. Of course I do. But more so, I'm not as worried about that. Whether I believe Donald Trump is racist or not really isn't important. There's a reason that white supremacy groups love Trump. There's a reason that members of the KKK support him. There's a reason that a massive majority of people of color do not like or trust him. Do I believe Trump is racist? Is he racist? Those don't really matter, because racist people certainly believe he's racist and a white supremacist. They long to see his policies enacted. They believe that he is the man for the job to bring about his white supremacist form of America, where white is the only normal, where English is the only language, and where the poor and marginalized people are kept down. I know a lot of people that probably voted for Donald Trump. I know many of them that probably wouldn't consider themselves racist. I know people who are fiscally conservative, but are truly wonderful people. However, I don't really understand how people could vote for this man who is the golden boy to white supremacists in our country. When a white supremacist group looks at Donald Trump and goes, "That's our man, yeah, that's our guy, he's gonna get the things that we want done," it should make us pause to think. Van Jones had a wonderful little thought piece on TV about how close the election was and how many people in this country are feeling today, regardless of the outcome, that I wanted to read to you. I think there's a lot of hurt out there. There is a moral victory and there is a political victory, and they are not the same thing. The political victory still may come, but I think for people who saw babies being snatched away from their mothers at the border, people are sending their kids into schools where the N-word is now being used against them. For people who have seen this wave of intolerance, they wanted a moral victory tonight. We wanted to see a repudiation of this direction for the country. And the fact that it is this close, I think it hurts. I think people got their hopes up looking at the polls, but I've got to be honest tonight that I think there were people who are hoping for a big repudiation, and there are people who are hurt and scared. Whether Biden wins or not, and you guys know I'm not an enormous Biden fan, this was not a massive moral victory. One of my favorite people to speak on issues of race right now is Allie Henney, and she said, "We might not have a presidential winner yet, but it is clear that whiteness won the election." And honestly, the election so far has played out eerily similar to how experts said it would. The in-person votes were going to be very high. Experts accurately predicted that the in-person voting at the polls on election day was going to lean towards looking like a Donald Trump victory. Everyone knew this. This was not a surprise, and it did. Many people went to bed last night thinking that Donald Trump was going to pull ahead with all the states in pink that were still yet to be added in. Experts also said, and I guess I was hoping for better from the President of the United States, that he was going to claim victory the night of, regardless if all the votes were counted or not. Which he did. And let me repeat that fact. The sitting President of the United States made a speech saying that he did, in fact, win the election. And I quote, Frankly, we did win this election. I was really hoping for better, but honestly, did anyone really expect that he would rise above that? I hope for more out of the president. I truly value and honor his office, and to have this man who so blatantly disrespects and disregards the voice of the American people is completely insane. I pray for our country. I pray for peace. I pray for justice. I pray that we would have a brighter future than our dark past. Lord, your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. Please join me next week as we finally get to the 13th Amendment. I'll see you back here, same time, same place.